$1,627. However, this funding was anticipated as to be cut and was budgeted with a reduction in the grant budget unit. In 2009-10, the impact to Mendocino County is $133,505. Booking fees, the governor proposes to reduce the funding by 10% to $131.6 million for juvenile probation for 2008-09. The governor is proposing to increase funding for 2009-10 by 3% from VLF funding. In 2008-09, the impact to Mendocino County is a reduction of $30,000 in probation budget 2560. But for 2009-10, there's an increase of $8,400 in probation as projected. Additionally, out of special session, there were some also parole reform measures, and I've listed those as follows. I won't go into detail. You could read those, but there's some threshold values. Parole supervision will be limited to violent, serious, and sexual offenders. And it looks like that this is carried forward into the legislative proposals as well. I've kind of listed some additional information there for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But basically, it's basically all around the state releasing, these criminal offenders for non-violent, serious, or sexual offenders back to the local governments. So, going forward, the community resources infrastructure, Prop 42 per Prop 1A. The governor does not propose any effects to local streets and roads funding. There is also no proposal to borrow from the Prop 42 funding at this time, although it is reported that the revenues are declining with the drop of gas and reduced consumption. The impact to Mendocino County is Budget Unit 3010 for 2009 is increased funding of $1.9 million. So, however, we are still looking at some cash deferrals for possible cash deferrals, and we'll know more as we go along here, but it doesn't look like that those cash deferrals are slated not to happen. So there is some cash impacts, but we will have some additional funding in Prop 42 for 2009-10. And I believe our Director of Transportation has reported this out in his Director's Report previously as well. In Prop 1B, the governor's budget also maintains the acceleration of Prop 1B funding to counties. However, there are certain restrictions to access these bond funds, such as encumbering the funds by December 2009, which our county has met these restrictions. Certifying that local fund balances do not exceed 3 months of highway user tax and transportation fund, the TIF revenues, and other accountability requirements yet to be defined. With the state being unable to issue bonds, however, and until the credit markets improve, there may not be any way to access these revenues until late 2009, which is also the reason why we have some deferrals probably. The impact to Mendocino County is in Budget 3010 for 2009-10 and is increased funding of $2.6 million once we get it. AB 900, the governor is proposing to reintroduce amendments to AB 900, Public Safety and Offender Rehabilitation Act of 2007. This bill would address support for state and local correctional infrastructure investment. Impact to Mendocino County, unfortunately, we don't know the impact to that in dollars at this time.
Jennifer, can I stop you there?
Yes.
Howard, I got a question for you. That $7.2 million in projects you had ready to go and you couldn't because you didn't have the $345,000 match. With them leaving Prop 42 and 1B alone, does that mean you'll be able to move forward with those projects?
Well, I think a lot of the problem is the cash flow that the whole county has. With Prop 42 there, yes, those projects were in the budget. They're storm damage and airport projects. It's the overall cash flow for the county that I think we just need to look at. There's also been a problem with what they call the pool money account at the state level. In fact, last week the CTC delayed allocation for the North State Street STIP project for a month, so I won't find out about that till next month. The problem with going to bid on some of the storm damage projects as well. They're largely federal. It comes back through the state OES. So we have received payments for some of the fire damage that happened from OES. We don't think that the federal payments are going to be delayed through that avenue, but right now staff is testing that. We billed for the last of our fire stuff. If it flows through, that isn't much. We already spent it, so we haven't got anything to lose. We'll bill for it, see if the reimbursements come. Then I'll feel a lot more confident about going back to Jennifer and Meredith and the CEO and moving forward with some storm damage, you know, once it looks like the money is going to come through the system.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. In the agriculture and natural resources area, as I discussed earlier, the Williamson Act, which was originally, and it's been going back and forth, has been slated for cut. The 2008-09 impact to Mendocino County is $565,000, and I believe has been discussed through even negotiation projects as a number as part of the budget shortfall. However, the Williamson Act is not included in the projected shortfall, which I will talk about in a few minutes, as far as, and in the auditor's revenue projections. At this time, as I stated before, the Williamson Act is not slated for cut. However, that's pending. So that's all.
Beyond the 10% that they already have projected.
Correct. That's for 2008-09. I meant for 2009-10.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Excuse me. So that concludes about the state's governor's January proposal. I did, however, kind of tag on at the last minute an update, which they have, as I stated earlier, the legislative have approved. And in brief comments, basically what's being proposed and has been approved and the governor still has yet to sign on the agreements is some additional $15 billion in total cuts, $14.4 billion in new and increased taxes on sales, vehicle, gasoline, and personal income taxes, $12 billion in borrowing funds against future profits from lottery, or basically lottery securitization, and short-term loans, and various accounting maneuvers. That being what I mentioned earlier about pulling funds from special funds and maneuvering them around to backfill for other programs. The cuts...
In various accounting maneuvers, does that mean they're going to hire that Madoff?
Could be, yes. Some of the cuts that is being proposed are, and approved, were schools and community colleges, $8 billion in cuts. State colleges and universities, $890 million in cuts. Scheduled cost of living increases for welfare recipients would be canceled. Mental health, Prop 63, and early childhood education programs, Prop 10, $830 million in cuts. This is basically what I was stating earlier about a shift in funds for from Prop 63 for the early periodic screening and diagnosis. That's what this basically is. And so, MHSA funds as well. So, again, public transit, $459 million in cuts, and those are the majority of the cuts that are now approved through legislation. In revenues, the governor has approved an increase in vehicle license fees, which would nearly double, going from the current rate of 0.65 to 1.15% of the value of a car or truck. 1.5
I want to stop you on each of these. Now, that doesn't take voter approval, right?
I'm not sure. I think it does.
That's a fee, that's not a tax, so they can do that without voter approval.